Good afternoon. Thank you very much for coming, everybody. And I'd like to start by thanking Önder for inviting me here and for being a successful applicant in this project. We're very glad to have the Turkish team working with us. And again, what I present is basically part of the current project that we have with Medit. So it's not just my work. Every effort is always collaborative, and there's also lots of good chance in winning projects. You have to know it. It's not just hard work. You need to be quite lucky to get it. So we were lucky, but then there are concrete results. And before I do, I would specifically like to thank to Mehmet Ali and to Önder for doing a lot of work on the project. Okay, and some of the data and all the teams. But they've been coordinating a lot of it. So I'll just use some of the data from the project and we'll present a certain issue in it. So I would like to start with an example, just to get you into the data. So we're dealing with data. We are analyzing 48 interviews. I'll say a few words, and many of you know it because you're involved in it, one way or another. Given that we have linguistic data, what we can do with it, and we have a certain theory, so it's based on reason-giving argumentation. And now just to present one of the little fragments from an interview. PAS stands for Portugal, and this is interview number 3. And I'm using it because this is the one that I know best. So the question was asked by Mali. So the whole project is about climate change. So what's happening? Okay, we have climate change. Those people are professionals in industry that is low carbon industry. So they are managers, consultants, engineers working in companies that deal something with renewable energy. So solar panels, wind turbines, all these kind of issues. And one of the questions is, so how do we solve this problem? One of the questions is about geoengineering. So doing some really serious changes to the climate, to the earth, such as spraying something in the atmosphere or putting certain plastics in the ocean so rather than solving the problem of climate change by changing our economy, you do some what is called the technological fix. And you just live like you were before. And Mali was asking this person, Pedro Barat, if this is not like playing God, that you're taking the whole planet and assuming the powerfulness of a human being. Okay? So he's responding like this. Oh, so this is really transcription. There's lots of grammatical errors. This is how people speak, okay? Repetition and all kinds of things. So he's saying, okay, there is a different direction, different levels here. One is, I don't think we're necessarily, by stating that we want to decarbonize the economy, we're just trying to solve an issue. So decarbonize is to stop using fossil fuels, okay? Carbon-based fossil fuels. That we inadvertently got into, right? We didn't know that fossil fuels were going to change the climate when we started using them 200 years ago. At the beginning of 19th century, the Industrial Revolution, okay? We have a responsibility to us, to our children, those that come after us, and to the vulnerable ones. To deal with this as quickly as possible. And I don't think that is playing God, so to speak. It's just facing up to the fact that we have that responsibility. And that means that we need to work on developing technologies. We need to, if needed be, we need to change lifestyles, etc., etc. We need to change systems of production, all of that. So what is important in this passage? So just very quickly. So before in the interview, he stated something that the crucial goal is to decarbonize the economy. Stop using fossil fuels. So stop with the coal, stop with the oil, these things. We need to transition to renewable energy. So he expresses it as we want to. That's a certain goal that we should have in this problem. Then he told the task is to solve an issue. So he presents some kind of issue, you can call it a problem. Now what is the problem? Okay, the problem is that fossil fuels that we are using are changing the climate. And probably in a way that is beyond repair possible. So we have a problem, we need to solve it. This is the goal, okay? Beyond that, why do we need to solve it? Why do we need to have this goal? And he talks about responsibility, okay? So that's some kind of moral value, moral code that we should follow. And he talks about our children and the vulnerable ones. So there is something that is called the ethics of future generations, that we don't care, we can actually, our generation, everybody in this room, can have very good life until we die, for the next 50 years probably. But those who come after us, in about 100 years, they will be really living in a different world and have a lot to do. So, in a sense, we are taking the credit from them and spending the money that they will, but nobody's going to return it to them. So this is the problem of the ethics of future generations. That's why he's talking about children and those who come after us. And the vulnerable ones, that's another type of ethics, because most of the development and the carbon production is happening in the developed world. So Western Europe, America, China, Japan. But those who are most affected are actually people in Africa, in Southeast Asia, in all these islands. So there is some, those who benefit are not those who actually are threatened by it. So that's why he talks about responsibility. So there is some kind of moral aspect to it. So we have a problem, we have a goal, and we have a certain value here. And then he's saying, what can we do about it? Okay, so he's trying to solve, so to look for a solution. Okay, and the solution that he's talking about, so he mentions at least three things: developing technology, so building better solar panels, better wind turbines, better batteries for the cars, so that we can have electric cars. All this. Then he talks about changing lifestyles, which means recycling more, consuming less, driving less, using public transportation, all these things, and changing systems of production also. So doing more changes in economy, all this, okay? So this is a possible solution, and this actually is almost a complete structure of practical reasoning. So I will come back to this example, but just to start with this, and then I will develop a little bit of a theoretical framework, and then we'll get back to the data. Okay, so I'm just trying to show how we can use concepts from argumentation theory to the data that we have collected. So practical reasoning, just to really explain, because sometimes there is a confusion, is reasoning about what to intend to do as opposed to theoretical reasoning, which is reasoning about what is the case. So in philosophy there is very simple distinction. There's only two types of reasoning. One is practical, when the conclusion is some kind of action, that you need to choose something, you need to do something, and you reason for it. See? Shall I go to Istanbul or shall I go to another place? You have a choice, you have to have reasons to choose between them. And theoretical reasoning can be called epistemic reasoning. It's about describing the world, stating what is the case. Okay? Now, this is the answer to the question that was raised even before. So what is the difference between reasoning and argumentation? That, of course, you can have all kinds of definitions for it, and there are many in philosophy. But just to make it simple, and I think actually quite correct, is to say that argumentation is reasoning expressed in language. So you can reason for yourself, you can walk and think to yourself, so to speak. But when you start putting it in language, in a form of communication, that's argumentation. So typically you also argue with the other, of course. So there is some kind of resistance from the other, difference of opinion, something like this. And then there is this concept that some of you might be familiar with, which is the concept of argument scheme. So there are specific forms of argumentation, such as Rachmi was discussing today, argument from analogy, okay? Or a causal argument, or argument from authority. You know, this is the case because some famous sheikh or whoever, president says it, or a scientist, so I'm going to do it, okay? So, also practical argumentation can be seen as a scheme. I will explain how, okay? It has specific inference rules, critical questions, and so on, okay? Now, the last point to say, that I will finish with it, that there are specific argumentative indicators, so linguistic patterns in language that you can distinguish, that can be used to distinguish between different parts of practical argumentation. So this is what we're doing. We have linguistic data, and we need to get from this linguistic data to certain forms of reasoning. Okay? Now, so in philosophy, in philosophy of action, in practical philosophy, the basic scheme would look like this, and this is based on work of Davidson. Well, pretty much every philosopher that works on it would use something like this. So you have three elements, okay? You start with something like a goal or desire, okay? So this is called propositional attitude. So every sentence has a certain content, and you have attitude to it. So I can desire this table, I can say that I can desire this table to be in my office because I don't have such a nice table. I can describe the table, or I can hate this table, or I can promise to give this table. Okay? So the content in a sense is this, whatever, this table, and I can have different attitudes to this. Okay? So the primary attitude in practical reasoning is a desire. That I want desire in a philosophical sense, simply that I want to have something. I want to reach certain goal. Okay. Now, so there's lots of debate, but at least, for example, by David Hume, this is the crucial thing. The desire, I want to have something, is the crucial human inclination, much more important than reason. Okay. And then, how do I achieve my goal, or how do I fulfill my desire or need? Okay. Well, then you look for certain means to get you there. So this is, here you have desire, here you have a belief. You believe that some action will take you to the goal. Okay. So you can imagine super simple examples. So I want to be rich, so I will work hard. Okay. Or I want to learn Italian, I will start course in Italian. Okay. So you have a certain belief, and you compare different courses of action. I can say something about, and then you conclude that if this action really fulfills your goal or desire, then you should simply do it. Okay? And this is the basic framework, at least how it is distinguished in Western analytic philosophy. The basic framework for any decision making and any practical decisions. Okay. Now, the problem with this is that, of course, there's much more to say about it than just this simplified scheme. But the problem is that if you carefully look at it, this scheme doesn't work. You can use, because you can use examples of practical reasoning that actually follow the scheme but are not rational. So this is the example that okay. So this is the same thing just written in language. So you have two premises and you have a conclusion, okay? This is called a goal premise, this is called a means goal premise, and this is called conclusion, okay? Now, if you move forward, so let's say you have something like, let's stop feeding our children, okay? That's your conclusion. Why? Because this will save us lots of money, and we really need to start saving. So let's say that your goal is to start saving, okay? That's a goal that many people have, and it's perfectly fine. On any moral or grounds, it's okay to save. Okay, then technically speaking, so there's nothing wrong with your desire to save. Technically speaking, spending less money on food is actually a proper means to the goal of saving money. So technically speaking, this premise is also correct. So what is the problem? That you have two correct premises, but you have a wrong conclusion. Okay, and that's exactly what fallacious argumentation is, wrong argumentation. When from correct premises you arrive at a wrong conclusion. Okay? So definitely stopping feeding your children is not a morally acceptable conclusion or action. Okay? So what is missing here is what is called the inference license or inference ticket. It's a technical term from philosophy of argumentation regarding the quality of the link between desired goal and proposed means. So what do I mean by it? So you can ask three questions about it. So not feeding children is the necessary way to save money. Okay? And these are really stupid, simple examples, but I don't know if any one of you knows anything about the crisis in Europe, the financial crisis. And so we live in Portugal, and this country was one of the countries that was bailed out. It actually went bankrupt. Okay? So then the question for the government was, do we need to go into this bailout and austerity measures that introduce all kinds of very strong austerity, so lower salaries, and everybody had lowered salaries and less public services, higher taxes, all this. Is it the only way? So, of course, they argued, yes, this is the only solution. So this is the first question that you ask. Is it really the only solution? Don't we have other options to save money? Okay. Then if you ask the question, of course there are other options. Then you have two other options. So if you have a couple of options, so is it the best way? So basically, you need to deliberate about the best option. Okay. And the best can mean most efficient, simplest. Bestness can have many different names. Okay. And the last thing you can ask, is it actually acceptable or good enough? And I think in this case, obviously you would say no. Okay? So I think here you would have the no answer to everything. And in this case, you should simply abandon your goal. Okay? So that's the basic idea. I would say something. If you have a strong desire or a goal, but every means that you can imagine, every measure to reach this goal is morally unacceptable, or morally or economic or in any way unacceptable, unfeasible, you should abandon your goal. Okay? So that's the example from John Searle, another philosopher. If the only way to make the San Francisco metro less busy is to kill every other passenger who enters the metro, technically speaking, it's a perfect way to limit the number of passengers, but it's not really. So you have to abandon the goal. It has to be busy, sorry, you have to live with it. Okay? Now, so one thing is asking about this quality. Is it necessary? Is it the best? Or is it at least good enough? Okay? And then there is two other things. Okay? What does it mean that X, so a certain action, leads to your goal? Okay? So one, it means that in order to reach the goal, you have to do something else. X. Okay? I will give examples of it. Okay? Another is that it's sufficient. This is very important to distinguish between the necessary and sufficient conditions. And another one, I will explain, this is my invention, is conducive. I will say, immediately move this. So, about necessary means, this is the classic, in philosophy, this is the most debated way of practical reasoning. So, if I want to get something, I have to do something else. And it's just a certain causal chain that you develop. So this is from Immanuel Kant, but I can give 14 other citations. Every big philosopher has something to say about it. So if you will the end, you also need to will the means which are necessary to reach this goal. Okay? In a sense, it's only logical. Okay? So for example, I will use this example. If you want to be a professor, you have to have a PhD. So you cannot have the goal or the aspiration to be a professor while abandoning the means of finishing your PhD. You have to do it. Okay?
All the efforts paid so far.
Well, then you have to abandon the goal. You say, I'm not good for it.
I'm saying that all the efforts to get to professorship without doing PhD, did they all pay?
I will have something to say about it. Just in a second, okay? In the next slide. But the thing, what is important about the necessary means that you have no alternative. So if it's absolutely necessary to do something, then you cannot choose. And one of the descriptions of this form of reasoning is TINA in English. There is no alternative. Okay, we have to do it. Okay? And it's very often used by politicians. They say, well, there is no alternative. We have to build the wall not to let the refugees, okay, because nothing else works. Okay. So I think Douglas Walton, who is another guy, scholar in argumentation, I think he got it completely right, completely wrong. Sorry, I have to criticize someone also. Just so he uses the notion of the most acceptable necessary condition, which is ridiculous. I mean, if you have necessary condition, you either have to do it or you abandon the goal. You cannot choose between necessary, because that's the definition of necessary, that you have no choice.
So basically he's classifying necessary conditions. There are acceptable ones and not acceptable
yes,
ones.
Which I...
and then there is most acceptable.
But it doesn't make sense. I don't think it does.
But let's say you want to get rich, so there are many ways of it.
No, but if there are many ways, then they are not necessary. If there are options, they are optional. That's the whole idea. So options are optional, necessities are necessary. And I think he's confusing two different ways. He's confusing the idea of having a choice to reach the goal with the idea of having to do something.
Yes.
But okay, I want to say quickly something about this necessary. Why is it so much discussed in philosophy? Okay, in the first place, so we are talking about some kind of informal argumentation, the argumentation that you do without the logical calculus. However, what is important here is that reasoning from necessary means actually is logically valid. It's called modus ponens. It's the most important form of reasoning in classical logic. So if I want certain goal, then I can get there only by means of doing this, but I really want it, so I should do this. Okay, and this is just the classical form, which of course is very important for philosophers, that they have also everything is logical now. Now, to speak about the PhD, so this is also just my work. Okay, this is conceptual. So there's three different ways you can talk about necessity. There is something that is called conceptual analytic necessity. In order to make bread, I need flour, because the very definition of bread is that it's some kind of food that you make of flour and water. In every culture that I know, you need to have flour to make bread. It can be different kinds of flour, but you need it. Okay, so by definition, in order to have a car, you need to have the wheels, because that's what car is. Okay, now. The other one is exactly this example. It's some kind of de jure. It's a necessity made by law, okay? Or it's a conventional necessity. So in order to be a professor, I need to have a PhD. There are some countries, however, even in Portugal in the old days, your master's degree was enough to be a professor, and PhD was just a little bonus, okay? So it really depends on, it's not necessity like with bread, that everybody everywhere needs to do it to make sense out of it. It is by law, okay? And the third one is the weakest one, which is de facto necessity. So in a sense, you have the same expression, I need, but the semantics is different. And this is also an example discussed by, for example, John Broome. There's another philosopher who talks about it. In order to be on time, I need to take a taxi. Okay? So if I want to be on time for my own presentation and I'm a little late, I need to take a taxi. But this is just a practical, de facto necessity. Okay? Contextual, practical necessity. Okay? There's no other way I can make it on time. I cannot take a tram, bus, metro. I need to take a taxi. Okay? So this necessity, if you fail to achieve your PhD, maybe you can go to another country where you can become a professor without a PhD degree. It's possible. So you can choose a different goal. You can revise your goal. Okay? So just to talk about this necessity. Now I want to say something about sufficient goal. So sufficient goal, sufficient means, is the means where, so necessary goals, it can be like this. In order to be a professor, you can have a couple of conditions. And it's typically, if you apply for any job or if you apply for your scholarship, it's the same. You need to have a PhD, you need to be fluent in English. Probably now in any country, in order to get a position, you need to be fluent in English. And you need to have, for example, in Portugal, you have to have a clear criminal record. So I need to go to the police and get the certificate that I didn't commit any crime in the last 10 years. Okay? If I have, I wouldn't be able to apply. So you need to have certain conditions. And let's say 4. All of them are necessary, but you need to have them all to be able to apply. Okay? Even. So none of them is sufficient, so to speak. Okay? I hope you understand this distinction. So between necessary conditions and sufficient. Okay? So they are typically individually necessary, but only jointly sufficient. Okay? Now, however, there are certain situations where just doing one thing will get you there. So this is called a sufficient condition. Okay? Let's say I have a goal of being in Istanbul on Thursday. Last Thursday I arrived here. Okay? So what do I do to do it? Okay? I can hitchhike in Lisbon. Okay? 5 days before, go to the highway, tell someone, take me to Madrid. In Madrid, take me to Monaco. In Monaco, say, take me to Venice. Okay? In Venice, take me to Yugoslavia. And there say, how about you take me to Istanbul? Okay? I think I can make it in 4 days. It's an option. And it's actually sufficient for me to be here to hitchhike. It's okay. I could be here. Okay? But I can also book a Turkish airline flight for 500 euros, or I can book TAP Portugal, it's a Portuguese airline, for 300 euros. What would you do? Of course, you would take, assuming that both these flights last 5 hours, what you do is you just choose the best option, right? So you choose the one. Here it takes you 5 days. Sorry, I don't have 5 days. I'm busy. I only have 5 hours. So what do? If you have 5 hours, I'd rather pay 300 euros than 500. This is, I think it's rational, but I think that's the best. Unless there are, I don't know, there are some problems that Portuguese Airlines, I don't know, needs a criminal record, then I wouldn't go. Why would they want to know about me? Anyway, so the basic idea is that each of these actions will actually make you fulfill your goal. But you have a set of options, and it's almost self-evident, rational, that you pick up the one that is just the best, okay, so to speak. Now, there is the weakest form that is called conducive means, okay? They are neither necessary nor sufficient. So this is the example taken from the book that I know some of you know. I want to learn Italian, this is your goal, so I will enroll on an Italian language course. I will start taking classes in Italian. But this is not sufficient, because just classes will not teach you Italian. You need to practice at home, go to Italy, blah, blah, blah, blah. And it's not actually necessary. You can go to Italy, you can watch Italian TV, like people in Albania do, to learn the language, or you can take an Italian girlfriend. That's also a good idea to learn Italian. So,
which one is cheapest?
not Italian girlfriend. I think watching TV would be the cheapest. So the idea is that typically in philosophy they don't discuss it. They only discuss necessary and sufficient. But still, this is some kind of reasonable conclusion, okay? But you need there are other alternatives, so it's not necessary. And typically, it's also not sufficient. You also need more. You need to study at home and watch movies, read Italian newspapers, but everything you need to learn the language, obviously. Okay. So now, the problem is here. The problem is that this form of reasoning is actually, logically speaking, invalid. It's fallacious. Okay? I don't want to say much about it, but for example, John Searle, a well-known philosopher, he talks a lot about it. That there is no, technically speaking, this form of reasoning is logically wrong. Okay, which obviously creates certain problems. It's the affirming the consequent fallacy. But I will skip that. Okay. So now the whole idea is, just to summarize, but I will still give an example or two, that if you have a choice of actions to do to reach your goal, you can do basically only two things. You have two criteria of choice. Okay. Either you take the best one, and it's a famous expression in philosophy: all things considered, best. Cheapest is the one concerned. But, you know, again, it might be cheapest killing every other passenger on San Francisco Metro, but it's probably not best, all things considered, okay? It might be just better running trains every minute rather than every 2 minutes, okay? And the other option is good enough. So this I didn't say much about it, but it's much debated also in practical philosophy. When you have certain options, and then you just set up a threshold. So you say, good enough. Let's say, I say to the secretary of our institute, look, any flight that is lower than 500 euros is okay.
It's sufficient to stimulate you more.
Thank you. So the idea is that always, it is called optimizing. Always trying to find the best option can actually run you crazy. Because, maybe there is another guy who has his €1 cheaper, maybe this is nicer, this is gonna last, this washing machine is gonna last half a year longer, and you are stuck in your thinking, and completely, rather than channeling your resources to something else, you are running in a sense in circles. So the idea, especially in cognitive science and computer science, is this idea of satisficing. Look, I'd rather read a book, I can afford a flight that is so expensive, and I will not dedicate the whole day or 24 hours looking for an offer that is €2 cheaper. Technically speaking, it's better because it's €2 cheaper. But I spend the whole day, in a sense, working for €2. Doesn't make sense, okay? So in many decisions, if you're buying a house, you would say, okay, it needs to be in this area. Anything below 200,000 is okay. Okay, Okay, it doesn't have to be the cheapest house in the area. So you do satisfy it. Okay. Okay. So shortly to summarize it, and then I move to the data and more examples. Okay. You can basically do things. There's two principles of these influence licenses of practical reason. So again, when you have a choice of action, you do what's necessary. That's just self-evident. If it's necessary, you have to do it. You can do what's best. That's also kind of rational, or at least what's good enough. Okay, I am giving enough. That's fine. No? And just to again, we talked about Aristotle today in the morning. Obviously, everything at least in Western philosophy, always comes down to Aristotle. So he was very smart. Okay, in Nicomachean Ethics, when he talks about deliberation, which is almost the same as practical reasoning, when you deliberate about certain courses of action, he takes that. His idea is that the end is always fixed, the goal. And then he says that typically this end is not produced by only one action. And then he says if it seems to be produced by several means, they consider by which it is most easily and best produced. Okay? So there is some kind of, again, you need to be optimal. Don't work too hard. If it's easier, just do the easier thing. Okay? Don't hitchhike from Lisbon. Just let your institute pay for your flight. Why do the hard thing? Okay, and best produced. Okay, so that's very important. Okay. Okay. So this is just to summarize. So basically, you have three types. If you have a necessary, no choice. Okay, you just have to do it or abandon the goal. Okay. Okay. Then if you have sufficient, you have a set of options. What do? You can do the best thing or the satisfactory, and the same for the conducive. Okay? This is the strongest in a way, this is the weakest. I will say something about it. Okay. So now, just to show you the framework that we are working with, and I know that some of you know it. So I'm extending, if you remember earlier, I had just two premises and the conclusion. Here, you have it extended. So this is just summarizing what I just said. So you have certain circumstances. This is the problem. Okay? This was not in the original philosopher's scheme. So you need to have a certain problem. Like the guy from the example, the problem is we have climate change. The climate is changing, it's warming, we have lots of floods and droughts. We have a problem. Then the goal is to get rid of the problem. Okay? And the goal is typically derived from some values. Okay? And the values, for example, in this example was we need to take care of the future generations and the people who live in islands, in small islands, who are being submerged every year in the sea. Kiribati, Marshall Islands, and others. Okay? Then, well, how do you get from the problem to the solution of the problem? You need to take some action. That's the whole idea. Okay? What is the action? Well, what I just said. So it can be a necessary action, satisfactory, or the best action. Okay? And then, if you choose, if you deliberate about each option, this is your conclusion. I should just do it. Okay? So this is derived, but slightly, this is in a sense my work, and the white thing is taken from Ferkel and Ferkel, one of the books that treats practical reasoning. Okay? Now, so now I will turn, for the last 10 minutes, to turn to the data and the project that we have. Okay? So, typically in philosophy, the examples of deliberation or practical reasoning are super simple. And the examples are such as, the classic examples are, if I want to be in London at 2 p.m., I need to catch a train at 1:30 or 10:30. If I want to see the Tour d'Eiffel, the Eiffel Tower, I need to go to Paris. Okay? Yes, we are dealing, and this is, I think, important for the project like this, where you combine philosophy with social sciences, that we actually have actual data. Okay? So, and this is much more complex, and especially when you talk about ecological reasoning or environmental argumentation. What is the problem here? Okay, so first problem is what is called epistemic uncertainty. Okay, so about climate change, there is this famous 97% agreement. So there are climate skeptics, you know, that there are people who say, oh, there's no climate change. These are the green Taliban, crazy people who just want to make money by selling solar panels. There is a lot of conspiracy theories and a lot of disagreement. And in a sense it's true, because in a super strict epistemic sense, the climate projections are based on very complex models. I know nothing about it, but those who work in climate science, in physics, they know that basically you have super complex modeling. So you put some data and you have some output, but you can never be sure, they cannot be sure, and nobody will tell you that for sure in 20 years we will have this kind of output. Okay? So this is one thing. Second thing is, what do you do when you don't have enough of physical data? Well, you need to base your argumentation on values. Okay? So you need to have certain overriding principle or a decision principle. And typically in these debates, this is, for example, the value of nature. That nature itself has a value and we humans should not destroy it. We already talked about future generations, also global justice. So that's again taking care of the islands, the poor people in the islands, okay? That you basically say, well, we are not 100% sure, but it's better to act now because we have ethical reasons, okay? Finally, there's two more. High stakes. So we might really be messing up with the climate, okay? So there is something that is called precautionary principle. It's a very important principle of practical action. So you are not 100% sure that there will be an earthquake in Istanbul, okay? But the government of Turkey, I'm sure it happens, is taking precautionary measures so that all the buildings that are built, they need to be earthquake proof, or at least they need to have something to protect against earthquakes. The same with fastening your seatbelt, okay? The chance that you will have an accident today is probably 0.0001%, okay? However, in any case, you should be wearing your... So, you take precaution. And precautionary principle is one of the crucial principles in philosophy of action. If there is some danger, you're not sure if it's going to happen or not, but you take measures to, as if it was possible, okay? So this is one of the crucial arguments in climate change. That we are not sure, but it's so dangerous that we rather act now. Fasten seatbelts, put the, what is it called? The protective airbags. Put the airbags and all this, okay? Just missed the word. Okay. And finally, what happens here that there is a plurality of parties. There's many different voices in climate change, from super radical ecologists to people who say, like Donald Trump, for example, well, what's the problem? This is climate change, minus 10 degrees in New York. Where's the climate change? He's ridiculizing people who say that climate change actually exists. And there are many people somewhere in the middle. And this is the data we're dealing with. There's many people who are actually economists. They don't care about nature. They just want to make money, and they just say, well, this is good business now, so let's keep going, okay? And this is something that I call polyglot. Okay? Now, so just to say something that Önder already said. So we have this project that is financed by the TÜBİTAK, the Portuguese Science Foundation, and the FCT, the Turkish and the Portuguese Science Foundation. And each team conducted 24 interviews with these managers. So altogether it's 48. They last almost 2 hours each interview on average, okay? And we were exactly asking about these things. What are the problems with climate change? What are you dealing with it? So in a sense, trying to motivate them to reason about it, okay? So the analysis, we had meetings on Friday, we have another meeting tomorrow to discuss it, okay? So we use a certain qualitative social science tool where you have all the interviews are here. PR Portugal, TR is Turkey. Here you have the interviews, and here you use what is called coding. So you go through the discourse and you add certain categories. So this is the example that I used at the beginning, okay? And you see, this is the goal, this is values about the responsibility, this is the means goal premise, okay? We need to do this and this to reach the goal, okay? You can add comments and so on, and then Ender is creating all kinds of crazy maps and networks, but it's very useful to analyze, just to show you how we work on this. Okay? Now, so I want to show you certain examples of this necessary, sufficient, and conducive. Okay, so actually, we still haven't finished the analysis. Okay, because all the codes were only, because we were so late, the Portuguese team, all the codes were only ready last week. So now we can really start doing. That's why I'm here, and it's a perfect time to just discuss it. Okay, but From what we did with Mali, also for another presentation, we went through many of these examples, but without the systematic statistics. So I don't want to claim that this is based on the statistics. No, but from what we've seen already is that there is a lot of strong we need to constructions. Okay. So again, this is the same example, but look what he's saying. He's not saying the best way is this or how about we do this. He's using very strong language here. Okay. That means that, okay, in a sense, logically speaking, we have, so it's another way, and then we have to, if needed. See, the only way to solve it, that's another interview, the only way to solve it is making China to agree with the same terms as to minimum wage, okay? Because so just to explain, I explained this example. This example is that okay, in developing countries, I don't know, Switzerland, Denmark, the Netherlands, they can actually completely get rid of the carbon. They're okay, because that's exactly because they're so developed and produce well. But in China, they still need cheap energy, so they use a lot of coal. And China is saying, okay, you are very smart because you developed to this level, and now you tell us to get rid of the coal. We also need, and the guy is saying, well, in the end, we need everybody in the world to reach certain level and agree on the same conditions, okay? So, the only way, again, this is showing that it's necessary to do it. If you want to prevent the climate change, we have to do it, okay? And we have many, okay? Then sufficient. Now, again, this is, I repeat, this is a very strong form of practical argumentation based on an effective golden bullet solution. So, you do one thing, boom, you get there. And this is very unlikely in the highly complex environmental policy, okay? It's very infrequent. So these people are also professional. They are engineers, they work in the business. And they are not politicians, because politicians will tell you, well, we just need to do this, we just need to get rid of refugees and everything will be perfect. No, nobody says it. I think so far we only found one instance or one kind of argument. Two people, it's not only this guy, it's also another guy, but I can't remember the name, who says, look, there is actually one thing. If we build batteries, like we have in the phone or your laptop, just huge, and it's going to be a cheap technology that you can buy it for 1,000 euros, okay? And then when the sun is shining, when the wind is blowing, you just charge the battery, and when it's cold and without wind and raining, you just use the battery like you use in your laptop. It's just that the battery will not run for, I don't know, 5 hours, but will be able to power your home for 3 days. Then, and the same for electric cars. So far, the best electric cars have a mileage of about 500 kilometers, maybe actually, like Tesla. You can drive 300 kilometers. It doesn't even get you to Ankara from here. But if you have a car that can do 500, some people say, or 500 or 600 kilometers, then this will be a point where people will just start buying these cars. Because only, I don't know, 2% of trips are beyond 500 kilometers. Most trips are commuting 50 kilometers, 100. So then, if you have a really good and cheap battery, that's it. We can completely change to electric cars and wind power, solar power, and hydropower, simply because the biggest problem now is that the energy needs to keep flowing all the time in the grid. But if you have this, it's over, okay? So two guys say that good storage solution, good batteries, then so this would be a sufficient means. If you have good cheap batteries, it's over. But that's the only instance, okay? And many more use this idea of conducive. This is the weakest, if you remember, okay? That I'm not sure if it's going to work, but it might be rational to do it. So here's the example. He's talking about, it's a specific policy in climate change, which is called carbon offsetting. So you might, if you buy a flight for individual, you can pay, I don't know, Turkish Airlines 2 euros extra to offset the carbon. So in a sense, they will pay someone else to take care of it. Or if you're a country and you release too much CO2, carbon dioxide, into the air, you can buy this from another country who releases less. Okay, so you are offsetting. You are punished for producing too much, and you pay for it. Okay, and the guy is saying, well, if I want to believe that at least it's a way to tackle. Okay, I am not sure I would have to know what the other options are. This is exactly how we think, okay? I want to believe that at least it's a way, not the way, okay, to tackle. It may not be the best, I'm not sure, it's a way. I want to believe that it's having at least some impact. So it's a good thing, but not perfect. It's not sufficient, not necessary, but let's do it, okay? That's his conclusion. Now, just to show you how people reason in our corpus, going for the best, what is happening, okay? So one way is when you have different options and you put, that's a classic economic rationality. You have a hierarchy, okay? So you have some kind of ordinal order. When you put, okay, this is the best option, this is second, when you're buying a car or anything, second best. And here the lady is talking about waste incineration, when you just burn your waste. So just burn it all and it's going to go to hell probably, I don't know. And then she's saying, you have waste that cannot be recycled, okay? So let's face reality. Some things cannot be recycled, so why not burn them? Okay? Then she's saying, and it's much better than going to landfill. So just storing it in the land, okay? Because if you put it on landfill, you can only take the biogas and produce energy. Of course, if you take the hierarchy from take care of the waste, the best thing is to prevent. So don't produce waste. Simply don't take the plastic bag from the grocery. Don't take it. Just bring your own bag, okay? To prevent. Then it's to reuse. So use it one more time. Use it, don't throw things, okay? The third best option is to recycle, okay? But if we cannot prevent reuse or recycle, then we should burn it, and the worst option is to just put it in the land, okay? So she builds a hierarchy, and it's clear that in this kind of thing, the best way is to limit consumption, prevent, okay? Okay, so we have, I have done some work, also partly with Mali, that in a grammatical or semantic way, in English it's very easy. I have no idea how it works in Turkish, but in English, if you know, you have superlative, like ST, okay? So the cheapest, the best, okay? So they use a lot. Renewable is really the cheapest energy, okay? The cheapest energy, blah, blah, blah, much better economy, and so on, okay? So here they are clearly indicating that they are going for the best. They are comparing options and saying, this is the cheapest, this is the fastest, this is the thing, blah, blah, blah, okay? Now, I'm almost finishing. I need about 3 minutes to finish. So, I was talking about this satisficing, just having a threshold, okay? That we will not be crazy enough to always think about the best option and try to optimize everything. So, in this climate debate, there is a lot of threshold setting. So, as you know, there is this idea of 2 degrees, 1.5 degrees, that we should limit, or in Europe there is a debate, we should limit emissions by 30%, limit energy use by 25% and all this. And it's actually legal, so countries in Europe have to do it, in European Union, members of the European Union, okay? So this is an example of moving away from dangerous climate change. It has been defined 2 degrees maximum, even 1.5, okay? We have a challenge. That challenge is total decarbonization of our economic system within a couple of generations. That's the goal, okay? So who knows? Maybe the best would be to go for 1 degree or 0.7 degree, but there is some debate that probably 2 will be just enough. If we don't reach 2, but by the way, we will, because it's already, how much is it, Mali? 1.5 already, huh?
Around 1, yeah.
Around 1, yeah. So probably with the current level of economic growth, we will surpass 2 anyways, but yeah, and this probably will be 2.7. So this is one example of kind of settling. If we are there, we are safe. Okay? So any ticket that is cheaper than 300 euros, that's fine. Okay. So again, just to say that I want to repeat. So there is lots of, mostly, at least looking at this part, there is lots of necessary goals. Okay. Sufficient. Only one instance. Conducive, also many, but these are more speculative means, okay? And then it's very clear that in many cases, these professionals that we interview, that they are building certain hierarchies of means. Okay? Okay, so discussion. Just 2 slides. So one challenge that we had as coders of this is that typically argumentation is very small. So you would say, well, I should be given coffee because you were also given coffee. So that's some kind of analogy or reciprocity argumentation. And it just takes 2 sentences to say it. But practical argumentation is complex because you need to describe the problem, you need to describe the goal, describe your values, then compare all these things. So it's very long in the end. And it was hard for us to say, oh, this is practical reasoning. Because typically, what is happening is that much of this is completely presupposed as an institutional common ground. So if any of the interviewers, so any of us in the team, is talking to a guy who is working in the solar panel industry, you don't need to talk that there is a climate change. Of course there is. That's why I'm working on this. So many of the problem description is already presupposed. And some of it, another option is that they start, when they introduce themselves, they discuss. So much of it is already there. Okay? So this is a challenge, this is a methodological challenge. Okay? That much of it in a way is implicit. Okay? Nobody will come here and like philosopher. If I need to be in London at 2 o'clock, then my desire, then my intention is and blah, blah, blah, blah. So you need to do reconstruction, and that's methodologically difficult. Okay. Now, as I said, there are arguments of various strength. Okay. So the strongest is the sufficient means. If we have the battery, then the climate change will not be a problem anymore. But only 2 guys, at least from the ones that I looked at. Is there any example in Turkey that someone says, if we just change something? No, you see, it's very rare because they are very efficiency, but they give a set.
It changes. For example, if they are working on efficiency, if they are promoting efficiency, they say, okay, if we efficiently design our buildings, even the governmental buildings, one of them was saying, it's going to be enough. But there were some people, if you just change the light bulbs, because he was promoting contracting light bulbs. Really, but it seemed very practical in that sense. There were some people who were talking about necessary means.
Yes, okay. But typically they are very careful about it, okay? Because again, they are not politicians who will tell you, let's just do this. So this is rare. Then the necessary means are very often and they are quite strong. But typically it's like calling, we have to act now. And the conducive, there's also many of them, just because they are the weakest. So it's easy to say, well, let's see, maybe it's good, I'm not sure. Okay? So this is our kind of hypothesis that we had with Mali already some time ago, that probably might be characteristics of the moderate technical discourse of the interviewers, okay? Or multidimensional character of climate goals. If you have a now, to be more specific, this is really important, and this is the last thing I want to say. So, also there is certain pattern that actually Mali observed, that this depends on the proximity and the type of goal to be achieved. Okay, so if they talk about something, our government in Portugal or in Turkey has to do something right now. If they don't protect the dams this year, there will be a problem. Then they typically talk about strong means. Okay, so the closer, next year Portuguese government has to do it and this and that. Now, and typically when they talk about procedural goals, so these are changes in law or something like that, they need to engage more people in discussion, they are strong. But when they talk about distant, what should we do in 15 years, in 10 years, they become much more speculative. And the means are, well, maybe we will go this way, let's see if it's possible to have all the electric cars. But so again, these are just hypotheses that we need to verify through the analysis. So
here, shouldn't necessarily be at the top.
We discussed it with Mali. In one sense, they are the strongest, because they are the strongest in a way of expressing certain moral imperative. We have to do it. This has to be done. This is the only way. Yes, they are the strongest in this sense. But in the sense of achieving the goal of practical reason, reaching the goal, the sufficient is the strongest. Because the sufficient tells you, just press the button, and that's it. Because the necessary goal, they might say, well, I have no idea how to solve the climate change, but I'm sure that we have to have more electric cars, change the law. We need to use less plastic. So these means are very strong in the sense of moral imperative, but they are not strong as inferences because they are not sure that it will get you to. Because doing the necessary thing does not mean that it will take you to the goal. Okay, that's exactly why you have sufficient. This will take you. And in this sense, in the sense of the inference itself, sufficient is stronger than the necessary. It's not clear enough.
To take you to your goal?
Yes, it's the only mean that takes you to a goal, but sometimes it might be together with other means. So again,
so then it is no longer necessary.
No, it is. Yeah, I know this is
like either there is the necessary mean or sufficient means, because they exclude each other. Because necessary.
No, there can be necessary.
Because necessary by definition, it is the only means that takes you there.
Yes.
If there are other means which may take you there, then it is no longer necessary.
Yes, that's correct. So there are special cases. In principle, you're correct. But imagine that there is imagine that you're looking for an assistant and you have a job application that the only requirement is you need to have a PhD in social sciences. Okay. Then this is both the necessary and the sufficient condition to apply, because you have only one. So you don't need to fulfill any other condition. You don't need to be a Turkish citizen. You don't need to speak English. So there are specific cases. These are the strongest, actually, the strongest in philosophy, that are at the same time necessary and sufficient. To turn on the light, I need to press the switch.
This goes back to Aristotle.
Yes, of course. No, of course. So, but the necessary, if you take them individually, it might be the case that you have 4 things that you need to do. So, have a PhD, speak English, I don't know, no criminal record, and speak French. I don't know. So each of them is individually necessary, but only together they are sufficient. Yeah. So in a very special case, you can have a one-element set that is
the necessary one may also be called sufficient, but the sufficient one may not be called the necessary.
Yes. Yes. Unless a super special case that you have only one.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So
but still,
maybe putting it in plural here is confusing.
But
you're saying necessary means. Right?
No.
It's as if you're thinking of them as a bunch. And so if
No.
The problem in English grammar is that the means with S is both singular and plural.
It's understood.
You can say a means.
No, I know it is single, but because when he defined it, he said necessary. Like let's say I want to go to Portuguese, and there is only one way to go there, through airplane, no other way to go there, right? So
Like
this is necessary means, because I have no other option. And if I tell you, you go to Portuguese with airplane, this is the strongest, because this is necessary. There is no other option, right? But then, like sufficient. He explained that there are 3 choices to go to Portuguese, right? Then this is less strong compared to the first one. I mean, the first one even undebatable.
Yes.
I mean, you cannot make any counter argument because that's the only one.
Yes, but that's. I'm aware of this, and I should be more precise. That in a sense of the imperative, the necessary is the strongest. Yes. But in the sense of realizing the goal, the sufficient is the strongest. And we had a debate with Mali exactly about this. Because the initial slide here was the necessary was the first. And we changed it precisely for this reason. That if there is something that just realizes your goal, this is the strongest, but that's called sufficient. But there are special cases like pressing the switch when it's both necessary. There's no other way to turn on the light. Okay, you can open the cables and touch them. I don't know, crazy stuff, of course. Or I can stand on my head and press the switch with my feet. It's possible in principle, but typically it's both necessary and sufficient. But, for example, to turn on the TV, it's necessary that I turn on the TV, and it's necessary that I turn on the cable TV. So I need to do 2 things. each of them is necessary, but only together they are sufficient to watch TV. So I have two remote controls, one, satellite or cable. You see, so that's the difference between this and this.
This is a meta case. Right? It's a meta case. It involves like several means.
Exactly, but that's the typical case with necessary.
So maybe you need to make a distinction between reaching the goal with a single mean or with several means.
Yes.
Then this confusion will be.
That's also carrying. That confusion will be, because indeed in English it's a grammatical confusion. Also, because means is also one of those very strange words that is plural in the singular. So you can say I have only one means. It's perfectly correct English.
Several means.
Also, it feels like there is also a weakest means which we might call, for the sake of time here, like redundant means. As you were giving the example. Okay, if you turn your feet and close the light with your feet, it's a means. It's sufficient.
It's actually sufficient, yes.
Yeah, but you can also say that it's redundant. In the sense that you have to do something else in order to reach it. You have to. It's redundant. Or turn your back is redundant.
What does strong mean here?
Yes, so that's exactly the distinction that I should be much clearer about, because there is two definitions of strong, so at least two, maybe there's more. The one that you are suggesting is that it's a very strong imperative for action. In this case, the necessary is the strongest. For us, the idea was that the strongest is the one that closes the reasoning, in a sense, the fastest, because with sufficient means you are getting to the goal, and that's the whole idea of practical reasoning, that you are performing certain action that takes you to the goal.
Cogently.
Cogent or yes, because in a sense that makes the whole argumentation. You cannot say valid because this is not logically valid, but cogent. That's exactly it's a technical term for informal argument.
So have you ever looked at the arguments from the normative side? So like you mentioned that there are so many need to have to.
Yes.
So these are like normative statements, and it's possible for one to classify the hierarchy of normative statements, like from strong to weak, not from the perspective of taking us to the goal, but from the normative obligation side. Let's say, which one is more strongly expresses the normative obligation that we have to do it.
Yes. So we have a special code that is called values.
Yes.
And we are just looking at it, but it's very clear that. So we discussed it on Friday. So the basic idea is that for some people, saving the planet is a value in itself. It's basically, the nature is precious. We are just part of nature. So the strongest imperative would be to save the earth or the nature or Gaia.
So how do people express the strongest imperative?
It depends on the person, because there are types of people for whom nature has almost religious value. That we need to preserve the birds and everything, so this is very important. For the others, it would be economy, for example, that we need to have an efficient system, and actually now it's more economic to have solar panels and wind. So it depends on the person, because for the guy for whom the nature comes first, even if you have to pay, let's say you have an ecological tax. Everybody here in this room is paying 50 euros a month because Turkish government wants to put this 50 euros. Will you be happy with it? I don't think that you. But there are some guys who say, "I will be happy to put 50 euros to eat less."
But linguistically, people may attach different values to different things. But when it comes to linguistically expressing it in language, it is a manifestation in language, grammar. How do they express it? like.
I mean, of course, they use
say
some.
that, like, we have to do it maybe 100%. We have to do it 50%.
But we found that they use something like more important, and this comes first.
Yes.
So they have these expressions.
Yeah.
But
Well, we can
I mean,
talk
one
about
way-
topos here, Marcin. Topos, logic. Yani we can say that as it is, this is practically normative and the best in terms of quality. And we can say it is normatively best in terms of quantity. We can say this mevazi.
No. I mean, I'm not looking at it from that perspective. Just in language, like how people express normatively strong obligation.
Yes.
Just
carry on.
one way it appears, and not in terms of terms that are being used, but in terms of the context within which, but linguistic context, and I think this is directly related to your interest when you distinguish between idealist and realist. So the idealist will tell you, they will just state the value, and then when someone argues against them and tell them, yeah, but this is too expensive, too economic, whatever, for them this is irrelevant because you already have
The value.
all the normativity coming from your saving the planet or wanting to do the right thing. But in terms of actual terms that we can, let's say, code, search and find, we don't have.
Yeah,
Because it's not.
These are like the two levels of the argumentation. Here, one is in terms of like efficiency, like what's necessary, like about means to take us to the goal. The other one is about why should I care about it?
About the circumstances.
This is about the normative aspect. Like one is about why should I save the nature.
Yeah.
The other, how can I save it?
Yes, exactly. But they are very smart here because one of the papers that I think you are going to develop is this one between the idealist and realism. The idea is that we discussed it on Friday, that the idealist always starts with the values, and he says these are not to be negotiated. We start this, even if we pay with the lower economic growth, lower salary, we still need to do it. And the realist will tell you, economy first. Let's see what we can do.
But don't they try to like convince their interlocutor to accept their values? Like don't you try to convince me if nature is the most important value for you? Like you try to convince me that nature is very important. That's why you should care about reducing the carbon.
We can talk about genres of rhetoric, genres of persuasion. Just finish it. Okay, I can say, for example, now I am giving a discourse and I'm using values in order to take you to my side. This is one way to express your normativity. The second is we are in a judicial setting. I am saying that according to law, which is normatively designed now, this is the case. Or I can say, and the other one is that I forget epidemic, in which I am trying to use the most convincing means and arguments.
Deliberative,
And I'm trying to adhere to you. So there are different types or genres of expressing your normative standpoint.
Yes, in principle, but in this material, because this is really depends. Well, this is a very tricky question that we also discussed a lot even before that we used some interviews from Mali's PhD dissertation that were similar but different. That this is a specific interview setting because these people are talking to Ender or to Mali. And for example, they are criticizing someone, so there is no direct, like I am trying to persuade the President of the Republic or the Prime Minister, that this is a little bit of a fake, because it's an interview. In a sense, we are on the same side, so who are they persuading? But of course, they are still producing reasons as if, you talk to a journalist and you talk to a scientist and they tell you things, so the persuasion is a little bit different than talking directly to people who are against you. So the means are different, but still we were surprised that many, they don't say, oh, these people are stupid, they are very rational, they are very moderate, but I think that their goal is more to present their reasons rather than use some tactics of persuasion, because this is not the goal of the interview. the task was not tell us what would you tell to a guy who is your prime minister. Even though they say it sometimes, how the Portuguese government should do this and that.
Only when we ask it. I just want to add one small thing to what you just said. There is this notion of self-presentation. So when you know that you are being recorded, either by just sound or in a TV show, one of the rhetorical parts is just not only your arguments, but your very behavior. So all the time that they were trying to be very nice, even the most ridiculous comments are when we sent from the video. Oh, of course I understand this person, like I'm a very understanding person, just by presenting oneself as a reasonable person. I think that's how their rhetoric works. So to say, not to convince a particular person, but to innovate the universal audience. So they are appealing to a much more broader framework of judgments. That's what I was saying.
Yes, but this is a really smart question, because so Mali mentioned this and also Rahmi, that there is a particular audience. If you're in a specific context, this guy is this kind of a person, and I exactly know what to tell him to persuade him. But here they're talking like this is the technical notion of a universal audience. They speak almost to everybody, because they wouldn't know how the data. I mean, we tell them at the beginning of the interview that's for scientific research, blah blah blah. It's going to be anonymous. So they are not arguing under their name for a newspaper. This is, in a sense, so the idea was speak the truth. You can be completely sincere, because this is anonymous, only we will know the names. When it comes to the actual papers, you will be called P3 or P11 or PR24 or whatever. So in one way, you can say that the discourse is less persuasive, because they don't need to use the tactics of diplomacy and persuasion to get the arguments. But on the other hand, it's more, in a sense, rational and sincere, because they can say what they really think without concern for this persuasive. I don't think they care whether they are in court. This is just, in a sense, rational deliberation.
Yeah, and by your jump, if the setting is changed, for example, imagine that we are in a TV program. Yeah, for example, in Turkey we have these TV programs in which every speaker, presumably ethically, has this right to talk about 5 minutes. So in that sense, he is giving you a dialectical, rhetorical explanation of his norms, what he understands from the world. But as he has 5 minutes, which he knows that no one is going to cut him, so he has this his way of, his manner of putting his normative ideas in that 5 minutes. But if I know that I have 1 minute, or if I know that I can only put just one proposition, and then I know that you are gonna talk up to me, I will have to change how I am putting my normative, how I am putting my value premises. So this is something that I'm looking for. Sorry, I'm just cutting you. For example, imagine a newspaper. In the rhetoric of newspaper, you have this page, and you can deploy and employ your rhetoric whichever way you use. So it's always about the material, the medium that you use. This was mine.
Do you ask questions which create moral dilemmas? For instance, like the one who says, I believe that we have to decarbonize the world because our future generations will suffer, and also people today, the disadvantaged ones, you said the miserable ones are suffering, and then you can respond to such reasoning. Did you know that if you want to save the miserables of today, you have to pay $100 a year as a tax, and in 20 years, this will accumulate to a degree that you will not be able to send your children to college.
No, this appears a lot, because in a sense the whole discourse of climate change is ridden with dilemmas, and typically there are dilemmas between
two eco-sciences. Ecological.
Yeah, between the classic dilemma would be that's another paper that we discussed on Friday to work to. one paper, because we had the data, so you can write different papers extracting the data. The dilemma between economy and ecology. And we discussed it for like 2 hours. What are the relations? Because you can say, well, it's exactly, they are mutually exclusive. So actually, you can have much better economic growth in Turkey probably, or in China, or in India, if you just keep using cheap coal, or Turkey is buying oil from Russia or Iran, and that's the cheapest way. Why would you invest now billions into some solar panels and wind turbines and hydro dams for hydro energy? That's too expensive. So in a sense, you would need to sacrifice economic growth for ecological performance. And no, they discuss it a lot, these dilemmas, and perhaps it might be worth to even generate a paper that would be, or some research question that would be more abstract, because we look concretely at the economy ecology dilemma. Because there's dilemmas. Well, there's different ways of going out of the dilemma. You can just take one of the horns of dilemmas, saying, well, exactly about values. So some people say, I'm an ecologist. I care about. So we should sacrifice economic growth. We need to save the planet. Other guys are saying, hey, let's be realistic. Nobody's going to do anything for ecology. It costs them money. So I'm sorry to say, but economy is most important. Let's go for it. And then the market will self-regulate everything. So these are the two extremes. And then the others are trying to say that actually it's not a dilemma in a strict sense that they are mutually exclusive. You can say, well, actually, the smart investment, like a future-proof investment, is investing in solar. You will make much more money in the end. Okay, maybe today and tomorrow and in 2020, you will make more money on buying and selling oil. But in 2022 or 2025, it's actually much smarter to have investment in solar panels. And so they say this is actually not a dilemma. So they dilute the dilemma. Or another option, the fourth that we discussed, is that you can use economy now to develop certain ways and as a means to the goal. So, okay, we will still be polluting for the 10 years, but slowly building the economy so that in 10 years it will actually be ecological. So these dilemmas appear, but they are typically, they are smart guys, they have ways to solve them.
They have a practical solution which is their job.
Yeah.
So they think that they are not experiencing any ethical dilemma. They know that the solution is efficiency, the solution is consultancy, or the solution is solar. So for them there is no dilemma.
But they don't know the sufficient solution.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there are also dilemmas between. Yeah, the typical dilemma that is much debated in this whole global discourse between the developing and developed countries. Because in a certain way, it would be the best if everybody, also in Asia, South America and Africa, if they move to the renewable energy. Okay? But that's another kind of patronizing, colonizing them and selling them again technologies. And so should they be, ethically speaking, should they be allowed to use cheap coal in Africa or in China or India? And that's a huge dilemma, because on the one, they shouldn't, because they are damaging the climate, and in the end it comes back to us and whatever. But on the other hand, they should, because we have been doing it for 200 years, so they should be given a chance too, to have a cheap development, cheap growth.
Just to add to this, one more dilemma we asked, the one between individual and collective action. I think all of them and all of us here would agree that both of them should be somehow united. But our question regarded where to start from, so to say. So whether the individual, no matter what the state is doing, let's say building bicycle pathways, I'm going to be the starting, I'm going to clean in front of my house and ride bicycle, or no, state should first intervene to make the individuals prepare for. So this is a very classical dilemma.
Classical dilemma between individual and collective action.
Yeah.
So, yeah, where to start?
Yeah.
And some people would tell you, well, you need to start. Don't use plastic. If they ask you in the shop, don't take the plastic back. Use public transportation. Don't have 3 cars. And the others would say, well, but this will never happen. And there is some data that says that all this action is only maybe 3% efficiency. And the other guys said, well, we should have radical change in the policies. So let's say radical tax. If you have an old diesel car, you pay 200 euros every month tax. So introduce legislation that will make people, tell people that everybody who buys an electric car gets 10,000 euro subsidy, or can park in the middle of Istanbul for free. This is what is happening in many European cities. In Amsterdam, where I lived for many years, it's super expensive to park. I think 1 hour is 5 euros, so 20 Turkish lira to park for 1 hour, and the space is so limited. But now there's many. If you have a Tesla car, or you can park for free, and there is a free charging. So that's a systemic change. It's just that if you work and you are kind of middle class guy who works in the center of Amsterdam and there's lots of businesses, then in a sense it's economic also to buy a Tesla, because you have free parking, free charging, and okay, maybe after 2 years of work it's actually for free. I mean, the difference between Tesla and I don't know, Volkswagen is actually so. But this requires a systemic. It's a law of the Kingdom of the Netherlands that there's a new bill. Or many cities now are introducing in actually cities, the whole countries like France, the Netherlands and Britain, that the sale of diesel combustion fuel cars will be prohibited. Let's say, I think the first was the Netherlands, 225.
I don't know for sure.
It's 7 years from now. They will only allow sale of electric, and I think France was 2040. It's short, it's in 20 years it will be prohibited. So this is the systemic change. Forget about your stupid plastic bottles splitting everything. No, just live the life you want, and the government will put it on you. And you understand the dilemma now. So
another dilemma you face, for example, the issue of batteries. For you are looking at the already made battery. But for example, right now there's a lot of debate on the battery because some of those components, the minerals that are used in the battery, people there in Congo are suffering because of those minerals, and the environment is damaged actually because of these batteries. So the issue comes when you are facing that kind of argument, where is the closure? Because however deep you go, there is a problem. You are also affecting somewhere, because the batteries are needed in Europe and other Western countries. But the more batteries that are developed, the worse it is for the Congolese environment.
I know this problem, and actually, so in batteries you need cadmium and all this, like what is called rare earths in English, and most production is actually in DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and it's really a huge problem. And I heard that Apple, the company, is actually now investing billions of euros in dollars in Congo to actually buy the factories, buy the mines, so that they are directly governed by Apple to secure for the next 10-15 years the production. And of course, as I said before, that there is a very complex system, and whenever you pull somewhere, you solve something in California, the hipster guys can drive their Teslas and be happy, then the people in Congo are suffering. But then the idea is, how about, so in the end it's comparative. I mean, if you compare it to coal production, okay, is coal being produced in a way that is perfect everywhere? I don't think so either. So then if you have it's a horrible comparison, but if you have people suffering in, let's say, South Africa is a big producer of gold, and I don't know, maybe of coal too. So you have a choice. You don't have a choice between nobody suffering and someone suffering. You have a choice between people in DRC suffering or people in South Africa suffering. And you have two levels of suffering, but one people are contributing to climate change, and the others are solving the climate change. What do you do then? You see, huh?
These are some dilemmas.
No, of course. So there was this example of this lady that was talking about China, and this was exactly about what you are talking about. That she's saying that we should also press on the China to introduce certain regulations. You see, so the only way to solve it is making China to agree with the same terms as to minimum wage, working conditions, resting times. So the idea would be, here the solution is that even Democratic Republic of Congo, China, every country should have the same regime of production. So if you want to work in the coal mine, okay, you work 8 hours, but this is very idealistic, you can understand. So that basically, if someone is producing somewhere in Africa or in Asia or in South America or Eastern Europe, the poor areas of the world, for Apple company or Tesla, they should have the same working conditions as people who work actually in Tesla or Apple.
Maybe this very relates to this issue of externalities. Because if this T-shirt is sold 1 lira, indeed they are stealing from nature or from labor. And it's indeed 20 lira. If you really calculate it as these guys are calculating, then the price should increase enormously. But this is how it's working.
And how we are going to externalize the value of oxygen? Are we going to externalize it for the next 10 years, for the next 100 years, for the next 1 million years? So it's like we are dealing with something that we don't know.
Another dilemma is, how can you decide on a dollar price of a labor or of a tree? We've been discussing this also. And there should be some value, dollar value of that valuation, external valuation, but is it ethical to, is another like first world concern. But in our case, of course, there should be a price tag for human life. Because otherwise, it's just being exploited.
But measuring everything in terms of dollar value, isn't that a value in itself? And why measure things in dollar value?
This is, if you don't, then one t-shirt is $1. They don't. So they.
Yeah, but maybe there should be some other parameters to measure.
This is the real dilemma. Yeah, you're right. That should be.
But this is a well-known kind of supply chain dilemma. That if you buy clothes, they're typically produced in Bangladesh or Pakistan or in these horrible conditions, but that's why they're cheap. So the idea that's under is completely right. So you introduce. I don't know how it's possible, by the way, to introduce good conditions in Democratic Republic of Congo. There's a civil war and there's all kinds of problems. But let's say that there is some kind of really good production practices, but then the price of every cell phone goes by $50. You understand? Because you need to pay these people American wages, and then it's hard. Okay, any more?
Thank you very much. Is there any questions, comments?
Thank you.